And we're live. Hey, Nathaniel, how are you going?
I am pretty good. How are you, Alexis?
Yeah, I'm well. Thank you for joining us today. Uh, Good topic for this time of year, I thought. Everyone's starting to feel a little bit phased by the year. The excitement of the new year is dying off, and we just need to get through to the end. Boredom and that state of, I guess I'm thinking of it almost like a free flow state of mind. Would you like to introduce the topic and tell us how it came up for you?
Sure. I mean, boredom's probably the least interesting topic I talk about in therapy, right? Because it's the one people least like to sit in. It's something that people are very averse to being in, and myself too. And I didn't even consider it to be something that was important until I stumbled upon some research into the nature of boredom and daydreaming and wasting time in my own practice when I was going down a bit of a research rabbit hole looking into mindfulness practices and mindfulness-based psychotherapies, which I do a lot of in my own practice with my clients. And I stumbled upon some papers that led onto other papers and onto other papers about the importance of being bored. And I thought, well, this is a bit weird. I hate being bored. So, I'll be sitting on my phone in between sessions when I've done my paperwork or sometimes when I've not done my paperwork. And I'll be avoiding being bored throughout the day. And if you look through, I guess, all of us time and time again, we're all avoiding being bored, whether it be on the bus, in the car, we're always consuming some sort of media, using our phones all the time. So the topic piqued my interest a lot. And when I read into it, I was pretty astonished at, I guess, the benefits that can come from letting yourself be bored and letting yourself waste time. So that's how I came to the topic, if that answers your question.
Yes, so there's an art. There's an art to being bored and potentially a dying art because there are so many available distractions or so many available engagements. So you're suggesting that rather than just filling in the blanks, because I even came across as a podcast recently talking about how you could use every 30 seconds of the day, whether you're sending an email or replying to a text, and that was my response. I
Oh
thought,
my God,
how
that
far have
sounds
we come?
exhausting.
It does sound exhausting and depleting to the nervous system. Um,
Mm,
so you're talking about the art of being bored, which I think is really relevant because I'm not sure we really know how. How.
mm.
What have you got for us? How do we allow? I think you used that word before, allowance. What have you got for us?
Allowing boredom. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? And I think to kind of introduce that idea, I'd like you to think about if you've ever listened to a really good song and within the song there's just been a moment where all the music stops and
Yeah.
there's just been a silence. And it's like the silence is a part of the music
Mm-hmm.
because without the silence, everything would just keep rolling on and it gives the note before it all the flavor and all the finality, and then it kicks back up again, or it's the gaps between the music. And boredom can be like that. It's almost the full stop at the end of a sentence or the reprieve before the next thing. But if we're constantly going and going using 30 seconds maximally, then well, it feeds into exactly why I talk about boredom a fair bit in therapy. It's because we've become people who prioritize productivity over everything else.
Mm.
And we're trying to be productive, whatever productivity may look like, in every waking moment that we can. And that just, well, it wreaks havoc on the nervous system, as you said, because all the stress hormones are just constantly firing off in our bodies. And we constantly feel like we have to be doing something, have to be doing something, have to be doing something. And boredom can become uncomfortable because we feel like we're being unproductive somehow. And that can tie into notes of worth and how am I being worthy right now if I'm not being productive and all sorts of things. So learning to be bored, super beneficial practice. but yes, really hard because, well, we've all forgotten how.
Yes. Okay. I'm hoping that the how is going to become clear.
Mm,
But I love what you've said about productivity tied in with our self-worth, because my sense is when I'm meditating, that it's a deliberate practice of seeing who I am when I'm not producing, and seeing that I have an intrinsic kind of value. I have intrinsic value just because I exist. And, I know I've had thoughts along the lines of, well, if I were made an invalid, if I couldn't contribute, that's probably not the politically correct terminology, but if I could not contribute mentally, physically, in any way to my community, how would I experience my own worth? And so that's really been a relevant question for me. So before we go any further, I'd love to hear your definition of boredom, or how you would describe this experience that you're talking about, being bored.
mm. I haven't really thought of a definition in a long time, so I'm gonna freewheel it and
Go for it.
see what I come up with.
Go
I think it is a state of non-productivity where you are unsure how to fill the time. And in some cases, it may be a disability to fill the time with something, or it is a state of being not entertained, perhaps. So not being sure, not entertained, and unproductive. But then we can get into, well, how do you define unproductive? But maybe we'll save that for another live.
No, I love that. That's great. And you're right. It does ask us to define then, well, what is productive, even what is success, what is good use of time. So that, yeah, they're all really relevant. It's reminding me as we're talking, and I'm keen to hear about the ways that you actually invite boredom into your life. But I'm reflecting on a time when I've been through a drastic amount of change in a short period of time, and I found that there was compulsion to create in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And I've shared this with a number of clients because I found it personally very healing. And I simply asked myself for a defined period of time, and I started out with like a 20-minute window, and then I gradually built it to like a 3-hour window. And within that time, I would say, Alexis, what if you could do no wrong right now? Just what if you could do no wrong? So it was about breaking out of judgment and expectation and shoulds and shouldn'ts, and just what happens, and I found myself getting quite engrossed. I remember I was painting bicycles. Like it was not, it was not for any productive reason, but it felt very, very, very valuable. And I haven't really had much chance to put language around why, other than I was surprised at what came out of me and how much creative compulsion there was in given the opportunity. Any thoughts on that? Or, yeah, how do you experience it and welcome it?
Well, I mean, I've got many thoughts on that, and I think I'll try to tie it into some how as well. It's to how to invite some more of this boredom into the day, into the life, and learn to do it again. And I guess my main thought on that topic is let yourself waste time. Just go, what if I just wasted the next 20 minutes? What does that look like? What does wasting time look like to me? And then you might find the initial, like I'm going to use the example of sitting on your phone and watching TikToks, right? That initial 20-minute implication that you might have gotten was, I'm going to spend this next 20 minutes watching TikTok. But what would it look like if I wasted time? And you might immediately go, I'd watch TikTok. But that's what I was originally going to do. But I wasn't seeing that as wasting time. So what does wasting time actually look like? Well, is it painting bicycles? Is it sitting and looking at that one interesting point on the wall for a while? And it's amazing the things that you can come up with if you go, what if I just wasted this time and just let myself do it? Yeah. And it's really handy when your psychologist tells you to do that too, because then you can justify it in your own brain as saying, oh, my psychologist told me to waste 20 minutes. So I'm going to do that because that's basically what my GP wrote on the prescription or what my psychologist told me to do. So whoever the person watching over is, they're going, okay, you can waste that time. And creativity comes from that. And it's so strange and so funny that our creativity comes from boredom, because when we're, spending that 20 minutes on TikTok, on Facebook, watching an episode of a Netflix series we've seen before, we aren't actually engaging any of those centers that are involved in creativity. We're not actively making something to fill the time, even though we're giving ourselves permission to waste it. So it doubles back on itself in terms of the productivity piece, where we're creating something, but then you're creating something for its own sake. So all of that just comes from going, what if I just wasted the next 20 minutes?
I just wasted. So how much of the benefit do you think is about permission?
I think a lot of it. And I don't think it was always that way. I think if we went back in time 20 years, we didn't often have to give ourselves permission to be bored, because we had to watch ad breaks between TV shows. We had to wait until 6 o'clock to watch The Simpsons. We had to sit on the bus and stare out the window. We didn't have to give ourselves permission to be bored. The world gave it to us. So we had to learn to fill the time ourselves. And that permission is, well, it's a radical act that you can give to yourself in a world where, at the moment, one of the greatest commodities that people are trying to market is the individual's attention, where ad spaces and apps are made with algorithms to keep your attention for the longest amount of time. So a very radical act is to decide, well, I'm going to choose where my attention goes for the next 20 minutes, and I'm going to choose to waste where my attention goes. And that's super fulfilling and very helpful for your mental health and your nervous system, funnily enough.
I'm really loving this. I love a radical act of giving to yourself, because it's almost reclaiming that real estate that's otherwise filled with marketing and jingles and images, and that we haven't even deliberately chosen. So I'm looking forward to being guided in a mindfulness practice in just a moment. We've had a few comments come through. Joe asks, isn't that what lazy Sundays are for? To relax and recoup. So yes, Joe, in fact, before we started this live, Nathaniel and I were just talking about how lovely it is to just slow down and allow a bit more space. And yeah, perfect day for it. It's a spring, slightly wintry day. It's a perfect day for really slowing down. And Libby gives a definition of boredom equaling not caring about being entertained. Okay, that's a nice one, Libby, not caring. Yeah, so I think she's talking about really taking off the pressure, isn't it? Just taking off that constant tickety tick, tick, do, got to. Not caring. Thank you, Libby. Stephanie says, can being or having depression be the same as being bored? Okay, nice question, Stephanie. What are your thoughts on that, Nathaniel? Can being depressed be the same as being bored?
Well, it's an interesting question. I really like that question, actually. It's very thought-provoking, in the sense that one of the mainstay, most common symptoms of depression is something called anhedonia. And anhedonia basically means that it's hard to find pleasure in everyday activities where you previously found pleasure, and that can feel very boring for people who have been through it. And most people will have felt that at some point during their lives, because it's normal to go through small periods of depression. It's less normal to have that chronically for a long period of time. So depression can fall very congruently with symptoms of boredom, essentially. But the problem is, with depression, it's very persistent, because everything can feel boring. Not everything's engaging. And part of the treatment for depression can then involve, well, how do we get engaged with things again? Because it's not normal to feel bored all the time. And no matter what we do, we can't stop being bored, because helpful boredom would definitely involve being able to stop being bored and go and do something and then get engaged in that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it's you're making me think of a podcast I heard from This Jungian Life, where they talk about creative depression and how the almost like that phase of life where things are dormant or slower or lower. The experiences of just being lower. I mean, we even talk about being low as a healthy experience, in contrast to the highs, the flightiness, the busyness, the excess. That there's something really valuable about being willing to explore almost the underworld or the shadow that comes out intrinsically when we do slow down. So it sounds like there is some crossover between depression and boredom. Anything more to say?
Something
Yeah.
Something I would also want to add to it as well is that something that can typically happen in depression and anxiety to a large extent is that people can engage in a process of what's called rumination, where rumination is constantly thinking over and over the same things, the same problems, looking for solutions in the absence of taking action on any of those things. So within the boredom space of depression or anxiety, if you were to experience either of these, I'd encourage you to think and reach out to a mental health professional as well, if you haven't already, as to what you may be thinking in those times of boredom. Are you thinking over the same problems, the same things that are bothering you in the absence of being able to take action or solve those kinds of things? Because then that can perpetuate the depression or the anxiety. So normal, I say normal, there's no such thing. I'd say helpful boredom may come from being in that space and then having all sorts of tangential thoughts about lots and lots of different things, whereas the boredom associated with anxiety or depression may be involved with a lot of problem solving that has been around and around and around many, many times.
Okay. So it sounds like there's value in recognizing an adaptive, a helpful, a therapeutic use of boredom as a deliberate practice, in contrast to, I guess, an unchosen or an unwanted experience, which may be associated with this lack of pleasure or this rumination, which is quite a different experience and probably worth seeking support.
Definitely.
Mia says, what I'm hearing is the language around this is super important. Okay, the language around it, to ask ourselves what it means to be bored. Yeah, I think you're right, Mia. That sounds like it was in response to what we were talking about earlier around identification with productivity and worth being tied in with that. And maybe it is a matter of time, it's time to start welcoming a healthy boredom, it's also an integration time, I find. We deliberately allow time on retreat, for example, for integration, because there's so much deep process happening, information coming in, and then applying that bodily time, for example. I guess the mind is quieter, which could be considered a state of boredom. But awareness in the body, I find, helps me to sift and sort and file the information that's coming in. So yeah, the definition of boredom is worth exploring a little further. We might have to pick it up again sometime. And Brian says,
and just to quickly touch on that as well, I mean, the language with which we describe anything is incredibly important, and language and words are the means with which therapy is delivered. It's very important how we talk about these things and what we say about them, and how we even justify them to ourselves. So yeah, the way that we talk about it is really important. I wish I had more time to talk about it.
I just think it's beautiful that you brought it to the conversation, and hopefully even just through giving it a half-hour airtime, that it'll flow into day-to-day conversations. So Brian says, I assume we need to take a break from dopamine. What neurochemicals are released when one is bored? Okay, good question. What are your thoughts, Nathaniel?
Definitely. It is a break from dopamine. And one thing that when you do take a break to deliberately be bored that you will experience is the brain is wanting to go back to scrolling to the next video, or it's going to go, no, don't go be bored yet. Go and scroll a bit further down, see what photo's next, or watch another episode or something like that, because it is a dopamine response that we're getting from engaging in things that feel productive or feel engaging. So it is a break from dopamine. You're quite right.
Yeah, that is a good question actually too, to really acknowledge when we are engaging, that difference between a deliberate, I've heard some term used for it, when I'm actively seeking an answer versus, following a line of thought. Again, there's a place for both. It sounds like really what we're talking about is mindfulness and deliberate use of my mind in all the ways that can be possible, from that very pinpoint focus to that very broad and everything in between. And you mentioned something earlier too, Nathaniel, about the executive function and the way that the brain works differently when we're even daydreaming. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's a big overlap between boredom and the idea of just sitting and daydreaming and sort of engaging in idle fantasies and things that have nothing to do with whatever task we are supposed to be doing at that moment. And an interesting factor of all of that is when we talk about the different functions that we need day to day to get through the day, one of the main important things, especially in work, is the idea of our executive functions, controlling our attention and being aware of where our attention is and being able to prioritize tasks. And when one daydreams, usually when you're bored, part of our executive functions is to be aware of our awareness. It's a bit of a higher order mental gymnastics kind of topic. And we might actually become unaware that our awareness is drifting. Like if you've ever kind of caught yourself daydreaming 5 minutes after you started and going, oh crap, I was supposed to be doing this. It's because that part of the brain's just switched back on. And the research in this stuff is pretty new and not a whole lot is understood about it. So I can only touch on it in a sort of surface level way. I'm also not a neuroscientist, so that also kind of gets in the way. But it's an interesting part where we can engage in these things because it's like the brain wants to do it. And I actually had a quote up. I'll read it now in terms of these executive functions. When you don't use a muscle, that muscle really isn't doing much of anything. But when your brain is supposedly doing nothing and daydreaming, it's really doing a tremendous amount. We call it a resting state, but the brain isn't resting at all. It's engaged in all these other functions behind the scenes where it's almost letting itself do it, to be creative, to be bored, that sort of thing.
Is this anything to do with the default mode network, Nathaniel? Rachel has been talking a lot to me about this, and I've been meaning to look it up, but just some of the words you've used there sound relevant. Is that familiar to you at all?
Yes, that did pop up in some of the reading I'd done, the default mode network, but I'm not super well versed in it, so I can't talk on it with much confidence.
That's okay. Yeah. We might ask Rachel to speak on that when she's back, because I know that it's a recent interest of hers, and it sounds like there's quite a lot of overlap. But certainly there's a huge amount of overlap with mindfulness. So I'm really keen for us all to have the opportunity just to sit quietly on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. So please, if you have any final questions, feel free to upload those, and we'll check in after just about a 5-minute mindfulness practice. Take it away, Nathaniel.
Right. So this may not be the most boring thing in the world because hopefully my voice is engaging enough. But what I'm going to try and lead you through now is just a 5-minute interval where you let yourself, well, waste the time.
Lovely.
In that I'm not going to try to teach you anything new. I'm just going to try to get you to focus on what's going on in this moment. So if you can, I'd like you to pick something that's in your sight right now, that's something that you can focus on and just hold your attention on. For me, I can see a nail sticking out of the wall in the wall that I'm looking at. But for you, it's going to be something different. And I'd like you to just focus your attention on that point and just keep your eyes on it. And as you do, just listen to the sound of my voice and notice that time is still passing. It hasn't stopped. You're not doing anything in this particular moment, or maybe you are because you're being rebellious, and I can't change that, but that's okay. And even if you are engaging in something else like scrolling through your phone, just notice the fact that you're doing that. Just notice what is going on in your brain right now and what your brain is telling you it wants to do. For me, it's telling me that I've got to keep talking, otherwise everyone's going to lose their attention. But for you, it might be, oh, maybe we should pull out our phone right now. Or perhaps it's drifted to another point in the room where you want to put your attention. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just your brain doing the things that it does. But right now, we're just going to allow ourselves to be in the moment, in the passing of time. The brain might want a quick hit of dopamine from a phone. It might want to look at all the other things going on around the room. But each time you notice that inclination, just come back to the point that you picked in the first, and then notice what your brain does with that. Notice if it comes up with any tangential thoughts about random things. You might be daydreaming already. There's nothing wrong with that. Just notice that. Come back to the point. Just notice what your brain generates in this one moment in time where some psychologist is talking on a Facebook Live, and every brain watching this at the moment is generating something new and unique. Just let yourself be in that moment. Allow yourself to have that moment to yourself, to your attention, wherever you may be choosing to put it. It's wholly unique to you. And remember that you can do this anytime, anywhere, for any amounts of seconds, minutes, hours even, where you can just choose one thing to pay attention to and keep your attention there for as long as you can. Then when it goes away, choose if you want to bring it back. There's nothing wrong with choosing for or against. Choose to be bored. Choose to waste time in the moment. Pick something neutral and keep your attention there. And you'll be amazed at what comes next, because it'll come from you. Even if it's the impulse to check your phone, that's coming from you too. And then it's your choice if you pick it up and look. And then just bring your attention back to wherever you want to keep it. And if you feel bored, good. That's my fault. So keep your attention on that point for the next 5 breaths. Just noticing the in and out of each breath. And maybe on each out breath, just say to yourself in your head the word allow. So in and then out, allow. In, allow. And then the word will lose all meaning by the 5th breath, so that's fine. And then when Alexis is done with that, we'll wrap up.
Mhm. Just noticing how luxurious it is to not need to fill. My voice has dropped an octave.
Mm.
Yeah, just to feel that time can open up rather than close. I really enjoyed that. It reminded me of my uni days when we used to just, I don't know, shoot the breeze, toss an idea back and forth. Those days when there was less pressure, less responsibility. A beautiful reminder that we can just engage in that very effortlessly and deeply relaxing. That was 5 minutes. Thank you. Really enjoyed that. And an important topic, I think, not one that I've come across in my reading, nor in my mindfulness studies. You might have stumbled on something quite unique here, Nathaniel. Maybe you'll be the boredom psychologist, and people will come to you to remember how to be bored.
Maybe I should coin that.
I'm
I'm
thinking
going to see the
so.
boring psychologist.
Go and see the
Gonna
boring
learn.
psychologist. Yeah, go and grab that domain. Get a few while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's check if there's any final comments. I hope you enjoyed the mindfulness, and feel free to leave some comments on how you feel after that. That looks like that's us. I'd imagine everyone is just super chilled after that and gone to spend the rest of the evening being very bored. And thanks for your valuable questions and comments, everybody. Libby says thank you. It was great. Thanks for coming along, you guys. And we'll definitely get Nathaniel back. It sounds like there's more to be explored. So happy practicing in the meantime, Nathaniel. It's lovely to hear your mindfulness has grown. From memory, we did do a practice together on your last visit. Is that right?
Yeah, we were talking about trauma, and we did a quick mindfulness practice then as well.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you're finding your own way. So I'm really, really lovely. Yeah, I'm really delighted to hear your mindfulness practice developing and sharing it. It's something quite different in guiding somebody else in a way that's so deeply personal. So thank you. And we'll be back again next Sunday, live at 5. And we have a retreat open for bookings, and it is filling up. I'm not sure if you're aware of the details, Nathaniel, but we've got 4 days over at Stradbroke Island in November, which is coming quickly. And we're looking at inviting more collaboration so that the core members of the community have all booked in. But we're looking at inviting trauma-informed practitioners from all avenues. So we've got some coming from the legal profession, some coming from even finance. And we're hoping just to fill in as many kind of angles as we can around trauma. But mostly it's a practical experience in self-inquiry. So Rachel will be guiding the non-violent communication. I'll be guiding the embodiment practices. And then we, between times, do lots of boredom, lots of integration, good food, ocean, stunning surrounds. But I think this one is going to be the first time that there's real, I'm going to say, like cross-pollination of ideas. That's what feels pertinent about this particular retreat. So if any of that resonates to you guys and you'd be interested to work with Dr. Rachel Hannon or myself and have access to these beautiful psychologists as well, then I'll put the link below and you can grab your ticket ASAP. Any final comments or reflections from you, Nathaniel? Anything you'd like to share?
No, just go let yourself be bored for a while. Give yourself permission if that is any sort of takeaway for anyone, and just be curious about what comes up for you. Curious, not judgmental, as the saying goes. And otherwise, thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure on a Sunday arvo. And thank you for all the terrific questions and insights from the people watching as well. It's definitely given me food for thought too, as to how I can expand the definitions that I use, how I talk about it. It's fantastic, and it's all things that help me grow as a practitioner too. So I'm very grateful for everyone who participated.
Beautiful. And Nathaniel, it's probably worth checking back in, in a week, say, because sometimes viewers leave comments even after the live, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on those too. So other than that, enjoy your new home, and we will catch you on the flip side. Okay, ciao,
Pleasure.
everybody. Good night.
See ya.